The auction notice had been nailed crooked to the post at the weir's edge, and Jessa Stillwater found herself staring at it for the third time that morning, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less threatening. They did not. The county commission would hear bids for the spring and summer fishing rights in 6 weeks, and the current leaseholders were invited to attend if they wished to retain their claim. She traced one blunt finger over the official seal, feeling the raised wax catch against her fingernail, and wondered how much coin her sister had managed to save from last season's catch. Behind her, the smokehouse door banged open with enough force to rattle the leather hinges, and Kara's voice rang out across the frozen shore. "Stop mooning at that damned paper and help me with these racks. The perch need turning before they dry out like tree bark." Jessa turned obediently, tucking her hands into the pockets of her heavy wool coat. Her sister stood in the doorway of the smokehouse, dark hair escaping from its braid in wild tendrils, hands on her hips in the posture that meant she had been calling for at least a minute before resorting to shouting. Kara was tall for an orc woman, lean and angular where Jessa was compact and soft around the edges, and she had never in her life hesitated to tell anyone exactly what she thought about anything. "I heard you the first time," Jessa said mildly, which was a lie, but a familiar one. "Like hell you did." Kara disappeared back into the fragrant smoke, and Jessa followed, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the dim interior. Rows of fish hung from the ceiling racks, golden and glistening, filling the small building with the smell of alder and applewood. Kara was already halfway up the ladder, reaching for the rope that controlled the upper racks. "Grab the other side before these come down crooked." They worked in the comfortable silence of long practice, rotating the fish so they would cure evenly, checking for any that had started to spoil. Jessa's hands moved automatically through the familiar tasks, while her mind circled back to the auction notice like a moth to lamplight. 6 weeks. They would need to present their case to the commission, explain why 2 orc women should be granted the lease over whatever human consortium showed up with deeper pockets and cleaner bloodlines. "Stop worrying," Kara said without looking at her. "I can hear you thinking from here, and it sounds like a stuck wagon wheel." "I am not worrying. You are always worrying. It is your natural state of being." Kara climbed down the ladder and wiped her hands on her apron, leaving streaks of fish oil across the canvas. "We have been working this weir for 3 years. The commission knows us. They know we bring in good numbers and we pay on time. They also know we are orcs. So, half the valley buys our smoked fish. Old Grenfeld at the tavern says our trout is the best he has ever served. That counts for something." Jessa wanted to believe her, but Kara had always possessed a confidence that seemed unshakable, while Jessa's own conviction tended to wobble at the first sign of opposition. Their father had called Kara a force of nature and Jessa his quiet waters, and the names had stuck in ways both comforting and confining. Kara made decisions, and Jessa implemented them. Kara talked and Jessa worked. It had always been that way. The door opened again, letting in a gust of winter air and a tall human man carrying an armload of mended netting. Benedict Thorne set the nets down carefully near the door, nodding to both sisters with the sort of understated politeness that characterized everything he did. He was lean and weathered, somewhere in his late 20s, with brown hair that fell into his eyes and hands that were always busy with some repair or another. "Finished the last of the gill nets," he said quietly. "The tears were worse than I thought, but they will hold through spring." "Good." Kara surveyed the pile with a critical eye. "We are going to need every inch of netting if we want to make a strong showing before the auction. Speaking of which, have you given any thought to what you are going to do when the ice breaks?" Your boat is kindling at the bottom of the lake, and I doubt you have coin for another." Benedict's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign that the comment had landed. Jessa shot her sister a warning look, but Kara either did not see it or chose to ignore it. Benedict had arrived at their door in late autumn, half frozen and hollow-eyed, after his fishing boat had gone through the ice during an early cold snap. He had lost everything he owned except the clothes on his back and the boat-building tools he had managed to salvage. In exchange for a place to sleep in their storage shed and meals at their table, he had spent the winter making repairs they could never have afforded to hire out, working with a quiet intensity that required no supervision and barely any conversation. "I will figure something out," Benedict said, which was what he always said when asked about his plans. He glanced at Jessa, just for a moment, and something in his expression softened before he looked away again. "Do you need help with anything else today?" "The Weir's upstream gate has been sticking," Jessa said before Kara could assign him some other task. "The ice shifted and I think one of the support posts moved. If you have time to look at it, I would be grateful. I will grab the tools." He left as quietly as he had entered, and Kara rounded on Jessa with exaggerated exasperation. "You are too soft on him. He is living here for free and eating our food. We should be working him harder. He has mended every net we own, rebuilt the smokehouse door, and reinforced half the weir posts. I think he has more than earned his keep." "Fine, fine. But you need to stop looking at him like a lost puppy every time I say something direct. The man has skin like leather. He can handle a little blunt conversation." Jessa felt heat rise in her cheeks and turned away, busying herself with hanging the nets to dry. "I do not look at him like anything." "Oh, you absolutely do. You get this soft expression like you are watching a fawn take its first steps, and it would be endearing if it was not so completely useless. I have no idea what you are talking about." Kara made a sound of pure frustration and grabbed her sister by the shoulders, turning her so they were face to face. Her dark eyes were dancing with mischief and affection in equal measure. "Listen to me, little sister. That man has been half in love with you since the first week he got here. Anyone with eyes can see it. He looks at you the way a starving man looks at bread, and you look at him the same way, except you are both so damned quiet about it that nothing is ever going to happen unless someone intervenes. You are imagining things. I am observant. There is a difference." Kara released her and stepped back, planting her hands on her hips again. "I am going to do you a favor and refuse to watch this pathetic dance continue. Something is going to happen, mark my words, and you are going to thank me for it later." "Kara, do not." But her sister was already striding toward the door, calling back over her shoulder about checking the ice thickness near the far traps. Jessa stood alone in the smokehouse, surrounded by the smell of curing fish and wood smoke, and tried to convince herself that Kara was wrong about everything. The problem was that Kara was rarely wrong about anything. The days that followed fell into their winter rhythm, measured by the slow tasks of maintaining equipment and preparing for the spring thaw. Benedict worked on the weir gate as promised, and Jessa found excuses to check on his progress more often than was strictly necessary. They spoke in the comfortable, elliptical way they had developed over the months, entire conversations happening in the spaces between words. "The post needs replacing," Benedict said, running his hand along the water-smoothed wood. "This one has been here since before you leased the weir, I would guess. Can it wait until after the auction? Probably, but not much longer." He looked up at her, squinting against the winter sun reflecting off the snow. "Are you worried about the hearing?" Jessa crouched beside him, examining the post in question. It was easier to talk when she had something to occupy her hands. Kara says I worry too much. Kara would charge into a burning building and expect the fire to get out of her way. Not everyone works like that. The corner of Jessa's mouth twitched. No, not everyone does. For what it is worth, I have seen the two of you work. You know this lake better than anyone. The commission would be foolish not to renew your lease. But will they see it that way? Or will they see two orc women with no family backing and no connections, going up against whatever human operation shows up with letters of credit and promises of bigger catches? Benedict was quiet for a long moment, his hand still resting on the damaged post. When he spoke, his voice was careful, like he was picking his way across thin ice. You are not just two orc women with no backing. You have 3 years of solid catches and good business relationships. That counts, and you are not alone. Something in the way he said it made Jessa's breath catch. She looked at him properly, taking in the set of his shoulders and the steadiness in his gray eyes, and felt Kara's words echo in her head with uncomfortable accuracy. That man has been half in love with you since the first week he got here. The post, she said abruptly, standing up. You said it needs replacing. I will see if we have timber that will work. If Benedict noticed her retreat, he was too polite to comment on it. Jessa walked back toward the smokehouse with measured steps, refusing to hurry, refusing to acknowledge the hammering of her heart or the way her hands had started to shake. She was being ridiculous. Benedict was their winter guest, nothing more. He would leave when the ice broke, find work at one of the lake villages, and build himself another boat. The fact that the thought of his departure left a hollow ache in her chest was irrelevant. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she nearly walked straight into Kara, who was waiting outside the smokehouse with the expression of someone who had been watching everything and forming conclusions. Not a word, Jessa warned. I was not going to say anything. You have that look on your face. I always have this look on my face. It is just my face. Kara fell into step beside her, matching her pace easily. Although, if I were going to say something, which I am not, I might point out that Benedict just offered to stand with you at the hearing. That is not nothing. He said we are not alone. That could mean many things. It could, but it does not. Kara bumped her shoulder against Jessa's affectionately. Look, I know you hate when I push, but sometimes people need pushing. Both of you are so busy being respectful and careful that you are going to let something good slip away, because neither of you has the courage to speak first. And if I speak and I am wrong, if he is just being kind because we gave him shelter, then I have made everything awkward and we still have to live and work together until spring. What if you are right and you say nothing, and he leaves in spring thinking you were never interested? Is that better? Jessa had no answer for that. They worked the rest of the day in relative silence, tending the trap lines and checking the ice conditions. The winter had been brutal, with cold snaps that froze the lake solid all the way to the far shore, but there were signs that the worst had passed. The days were getting longer, the sun stronger. In another month, maybe less, the ice would start to break up along the shoreline and the spring fish would begin their runs. And then the auction would come, and with it the question of whether they could keep the life they had built. That evening, as they sat around the fire in the small cabin they shared, Kara announced that she was going to the village the next day to talk to some of their buyers and drum up support for the hearing. We need people to speak for us, she said, poking at the fire with a stick. Grenfeld from the tavern, old Martha who runs the general store, maybe that factor who buys our premium catch for the city markets. If we show up with testimonials, it makes us look established. That is a good idea, Jessa agreed. I know it is a good idea. I had it. Kara grinned across the fire. I will be gone overnight, probably. Martha always insists I stay for dinner when I visit, and she lives clear on the other side of the village. Think you can manage things here without me?" The question was casual, but Jessa caught the glint in her sister's eye and suddenly understood that this was no spontaneous trip. Kara was engineering something, creating an opportunity with all the subtlety of a hammer to the head. "We will be fine," Jessa said firmly. "Benedict and I can handle the routine work." "I am sure you can." Kara's grin widened. "Just do not burn down the smokehouse while I am gone, or do anything else I would have to hear about later." "Kara." "What?" "I am just saying, things happen when people are left alone together. Responsible things, like conversations and honesty and maybe, if you are very brave, actual expressions of human emotion." "Orc emotion," Jessa corrected automatically. "You know what I mean." Benedict, who had been sitting quietly in the corner mending a leather harness, cleared his throat. "I can sleep in the smokehouse while Kara is gone, if that would be more appropriate." "Absolutely not," Kara said before Jessa could respond. "You are not sleeping in a building that smells like fish guts just because my sister is too nervous to be alone in a cabin with a man she is attracted to. You will stay exactly where you have been staying, in the shed with the tools, and everyone will behave like adults about it." The silence that followed was excruciating. Jessa stared into the fire and wished fervently for the ability to disappear. Benedict had gone very still, his hands frozen on the harness, and even Kara seemed to realize she might have pushed too far too fast. "I am going to check the nets one more time before bed," Benedict said finally, setting the harness aside with careful precision. He left without looking at either of them, and the cabin door closed behind him with a quiet click. Jessa turned on her sister. "What is wrong with you?" "Many things, apparently." Kara had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "That may have been too blunt. You think?" "Look, I am trying to help. Both of you are dancing around each other like you are afraid of breaking something, and meanwhile time is passing and spring is coming and nothing is happening. Someone needs to light a fire under this situation. This is not a situation that needs a fire. This is my life, Kara, and I will handle it in my own way. Your way is to do nothing and hope that somehow, magically, everything works out. My way is to be careful and respectful and not throw people's private feelings into the middle of a conversation like you are dealing cards." Jessa stood, agitation driving her to her feet. "You cannot just push people together and expect them to fall in love because you have decided it should happen." "I am not deciding anything. I am pointing out what is already there." Kara's voice softened. "Jessa, I love you. You are my sister and my partner and the best person I know. But you are so afraid of making a mistake that you never make a move at all, and I am watching you miss out on something real because of that fear." Jessa wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the fire. "What if it is not real? What if it is just proximity and convenience, and the moment he has other options he realizes there is nothing actually there? What if it is real and you throw it away because you are too scared to find out?" There was no good answer to that. Jessa went to bed shortly after, climbing the ladder to the small loft space she and Kara shared, and lay awake for a long time listening to the wind howl across the frozen lake. Somewhere outside, in the shed that they had cleared for him, Benedict was probably also lying awake, replaying Kara's words and wondering what he was supposed to do with them. Kara left at dawn the next morning, bundled against the cold and carrying a pack full of sample fish to show potential supporters. She hugged Jessa goodbye with extra force, whispering, "Be brave, little sister," before setting off across the ice toward the village. Jessa watched her go until she was just a dark speck against the white expanse, then turned to face the day's work with a mixture of relief and anxiety. She and Benedict would be alone for the first time since Kara's disastrous announcement, and she had no idea how to navigate the new awkwardness that had settled over everything. Benedict solved the problem by pretending nothing had happened at all. He greeted Jessa with his usual quiet courtesy, discussed the day's tasks with his usual efficiency, and set to work on the trapline maintenance with his usual focus. If he was uncomfortable, he hid it so well that Jessa almost believed she had imagined the tension. They worked through the morning in near silence, checking traps and repairing ice damage to the weir structure. It was familiar work, the kind that required attention but not much conversation, and Jessa felt herself beginning to relax into the rhythm of it. Maybe Kara had been wrong. Maybe Benedict was just a kind man who saw them as friends and employers, nothing more complicated than that. Then the ice shifted beneath her feet with a crack like breaking stone, and suddenly she was falling, the frozen surface giving way to black water that hit like a fist to the chest. The cold was shocking, absolute, driving the air from her lungs in a startled gasp that filled her mouth with lake water. Jessa thrashed instinctively, her heavy winter coat dragging her down, her boots like anchors. The ice had broken in a wide circle around her, treacherous rotten ice hidden beneath a layer of snow, and there was nothing to grab onto, nothing solid within reach. Then Benedict's hand closed around her wrist like iron, and he was hauling her up with strength she had not known he possessed, dragging her across the broken ice toward solid ground. She clawed at the surface, her fingers numb and useless, while Benedict braced himself and pulled, his face set in grim determination. They collapsed together on safe ice, both gasping for breath, and Benedict immediately started stripping off his coat to wrap around her. "Move," he ordered, his voice sharp with urgency. "We need to get you to the cabin now before hypothermia sets in." Jessa tried to stand and found her legs would not cooperate. Everything felt distant and fuzzy, like she was experiencing the world through deep water. Benedict swore, a long creative string of curses she had never heard him use before, and then he was lifting her bodily, carrying her across the ice toward the shore. The trip back to the cabin was a blur of cold and confusion. She was vaguely aware of Benedict kicking the door open, of him setting her down near the fire and barking orders that her slow brain could not quite process. He built up the fire to a roaring blaze, stripped off her wet clothes with brisk efficiency that was somehow entirely impersonal, and wrapped her in every blanket they owned. "Stay awake," he kept saying, rubbing her hands and feet to restore circulation. "Jessa, stay with me." "You need to stay awake." "I am awake," she managed through chattering teeth. "I am fine." "You are not fine. You went through the ice and you were under for at least 30 seconds. You are hypothermic and we need to get your core temperature up." He disappeared for a moment and came back with hot tea laced with honey, supporting her head while she drank it in small sips. The warmth spread through her chest, chasing away some of the awful cold, and her thoughts began to clear. Benedict was kneeling in front of her, his hair wet at the ends where he had leaned out over the broken ice to reach her, his shirt soaked through across the shoulders and chest. "You are wet too," she said stupidly. "Not as wet as you. I will change in a minute." But he made no move to leave, his hands still wrapped around hers, his eyes searching her face with naked worry. "That was too close. Another minute and you would have gone under completely, but you pulled me out. I almost did not reach you in time." There was something raw in his voice, something unguarded, and Jessa found herself suddenly, completely awake, the fog of cold shock burning away in the heat of understanding. Benedict was still holding her hands, his grip almost painful in its intensity, and he was looking at her like she was the most important thing in the world. "Benedict," she started, and then did not know how to finish. He closed his eyes briefly, then released her hands and sat back on his heels. I should get you more tea and something to eat. You need to warm up from the inside. Wait. Jessa caught his sleeve before he could stand. Stay, just for a moment. He stayed, still kneeling, still close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. The fire crackled and popped in the hearth, painting flickering shadows across the cabin walls. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the shutters. Kara said something yesterday, Jessa began carefully. Something about you and me. I need to know if she was just being Kara, seeing things that are not there, or if there was truth in it. Benedict's expression did something complicated, cycling through denial and resignation before landing on a sort of exhausted honesty. Your sister is many things, but unobservant is not one of them. So it is true. Is that a problem? No, it is not a problem. Jessa pulled the blankets tighter around herself, trying to find courage in the warmth and failing. It is just that I thought I was the only one who felt that way, and I did not want to say anything and ruin what we had. This arrangement, I mean. The working relationship. Benedict laughed, a short, rough sound without much humor. I have been here for 4 months thinking the exact same thing. Afraid that if I said anything, you would ask me to leave, or Kara would throw me out for overstepping. So I just kept my head down and worked and told myself it was enough to be near you. But it is not enough. No. He met her eyes squarely. It is not enough. But I did not think I had the right to ask for more. You gave me shelter when I had nothing. You fed me and trusted me and treated me like a person worth knowing. And I am just a boat builder with no prospects and no boat. What do I have to offer someone like you? Jessa stared at him, at this quiet man who had saved her life without hesitation, who had spent 4 months working himself to exhaustion to repay a kindness, who looked at her now with his heart in his eyes. You have everything, she said simply. You have yourself, and that is everything I want. The words hung in the air between them, simple and true, and then Benedict was moving, closing the small distance between them to press his forehead against hers. His hands came up to cradle her face, gentle despite the calluses and the strength she knew he possessed. If I kiss you right now, it will not be because anyone pushed me into it, he said quietly. It will be because I have wanted to since the first week I was here, and I am done pretending otherwise. Then kiss me already, Jessa breathed, and he did. It was a soft kiss, tentative and questioning, his lips warm against hers. Jessa leaned into it, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders through the wet fabric of his shirt, and felt something inside her chest unknot and bloom. This was real. This was happening. And it was nothing like she had imagined, which was to say it was better, because it was true. They pulled apart slowly, reluctantly, and Benedict rested his forehead against hers again with a shaky exhale. We should probably talk about this, about what happens next. Yes. But maybe after I finish warming up and you change into dry clothes. Practical as always. But he was smiling, a real genuine smile that transformed his usually serious face into something bright and open. He helped her move closer to the fire, then went to change his clothes, and when he came back, they sat together on the hearthstones and talked. Really talked, about the things they had been carefully not saying for months. Benedict told her about losing his boat, about the grinding fear of having nothing and nowhere to go, about how her casual offer of shelter had felt like salvation. Jessa told him about always being the quiet sister, about watching Kara navigate the world with confidence she could not match, about being afraid that she was too soft for the hard work of running the weir. You are not soft, Benedict said firmly. You are kind. There is a difference. Soft means weak. Kind means strong enough to choose gentleness. That sounds like something from a poem. It is something I believe. They talked until the sun began to set, painting the cabin windows orange and gold, and Jessa realized with a start that they had lost most of the day to conversation. There was work that needed doing, traps that needed checking, but for once she could not bring herself to care. This mattered more. Kara is going to be insufferable when she finds out she was right, Jessa said eventually. Benedict groaned. I had not thought of that. She will probably take credit for the whole thing, say that if she had not pushed, we would never have spoken up. She might have a point. Don't tell her that. She will never let us hear the end of it. They were both laughing when the cabin door burst open and Kara herself appeared, covered in snow and breathing hard. Jessa, we have a problem. I ran into Grenfell on the road, and he told me that the Marston Fishing Consortium put in their bid for the Weir lease 3 weeks ago. They have been quietly buying up leases all along the eastern shore. They are planning to monopolize the whole lake fishery, and we are standing directly in their way. The laughter died. Jessa stood up, the blankets falling away, suddenly cold again despite the fire. 3 weeks ago. Why are we only hearing about this now? Because they did not want anyone to know until it was too late to organize opposition. But Grenfell has connections with the county clerk's office, and his nephew let it slip. Kara stopped, taking in the scene properly for the first time. Jessa in dry clothes by the fire, Benedict sitting close beside her. The atmosphere of the cabin changed in some indefinable but obvious way. Wait, what happened here? I fell through the ice, Jessa said. Benedict pulled me out. We have been warming up. Is that all you have been doing? Despite everything, despite the new threat hanging over them, Jessa felt herself blush. Kara, this is not the time. But Kara was grinning wide and delighted. Oh, something definitely happened. I can tell. You have that look. What look? That look people get when they finally figure out what everyone else already knew. Good. It is about time. I was starting to think I would have to do something drastic. She paused. More drastic. Whatever. Point is, you are welcome. We were getting to it on our own, Benedict said mildly. Sure you were. And I am the queen of the winter court. Kara shook snow from her coat and moved to the fire, warming her hands. But seriously, we need to talk about the Marston Consortium. This changes everything. They have money and influence, and they are not going to take kindly to a couple of orc women standing between them and a profitable lease. What do they want with our weir specifically? Jessa asked. The lake is huge. There are dozens of other fishing sites, but none with our yields. We have been pulling in record catches for 3 years running. Everyone knows the Stillwater operation is profitable. Marston wants that, and they want to squeeze out any independent operators who might compete with their monopoly. Benedict frowned. Can they do that? Just buy up all the leases? If they have enough coin and the right connections, yes. The county commission is supposed to consider existing leaseholders first, but that is a guideline, not a law. If Marston offers substantially more money or makes a case that they can increase overall productivity, the commission might rule in their favor. Jessa sank back down by the fire, her mind racing. The fragile joy of the afternoon felt very far away now, replaced by cold calculation. So what do? We cannot outbid them financially, and we do not have the kind of connections that would sway the commission. No, but we have 3 years of proven success and a community that relies on us. That has to count for something. Kara looked between them, her expression turning thoughtful. And we might have more than I realized. Benedict, what were you planning to do come spring? Benedict glanced at Jessa before answering. I was going to look for work building boats. Try to save up for materials to start my own operation again. Why? Because the weir needs a licensed boat builder, and having one as part of our operation would strengthen our bid considerably. The commission likes to see diversified fishing operations, people who can handle different aspects of the trade. If you were to go in on the lease with us, as a partner rather than just hired help, it would show stability and expansion potential. Kara, Jessa said warningly. You cannot just, I am not just anything, I am making a practical business proposal. Kara held up her hands. Look, I know you two just figured out your personal situation and I am not trying to complicate that. But the fact is, Benedict has skills we need and we have an operation he could be part of. This is not charity and it is not manipulation. It is good business sense. Benedict was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. When he spoke, his voice was measured. I have no capital to invest. I lost everything when my boat went down. I cannot buy into a partnership with nothing to offer. You have labor and expertise. That is worth more than coin to us right now. Kara sat down across from them, her posture shifting from bossy older sister to serious business partner. Here is what I am proposing. We go to the commission and we present ourselves as a diversified operation. Stillwater Fishery and Boat Works, or whatever we want to call it. 2 licensed fishers, 1 licensed builder, all with proven track records. We agree to maintain the current catch levels and add boat building services to the lake community. That makes us valuable beyond just fishing rights. And if the commission asks what Benedict is bringing to the partnership, Jessa asked, then we tell them the truth. He is investing sweat equity. He will build the boats, maintain the weir infrastructure, and take a share of the profits in lieu of wages. It is a common arrangement in frontier operations. The commission will understand it. Jessa looked at Benedict, trying to read his expression. This was happening too fast, Kara's mind working at its usual breakneck pace while her struggled to keep up. What do you think? She asked him quietly. Benedict was still looking at the fire, his brow furrowed in thought. I think it could work, if the commission will accept it. But I also think there is a risk. If Marston sees you partnering with a human, they might use that against you. Claim you are not a real orc operation, that you are being manipulated or used as a front. Let them try, Kara said darkly. Anyone who knows us will laugh at the idea of someone manipulating me into anything. But they do not know us. Not really. Jessa wrapped her arms around herself, feeling cold again despite the fire. To them, we are just 2 orc women who have been lucky for a few years. They do not know what we have built or how hard we have worked. And if Marston has been planning this for weeks, they have already crafted their argument. They will paint us as exactly what you said, Benedict. Outsiders who do not belong here, problems to be removed. Then we show them they are wrong. Kara's voice was firm, brooking no argument. We gather testimonials from everyone we do business with. We document our catches, our sales, our contribution to the local economy. We make it impossible for the commission to ignore what we have accomplished. And we do it together, all 3 of us, as a united front. The cabin fell silent except for the crackle of the fire and the wind outside. Jessa felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her, heavy as lake ice. If they did this, if they brought Benedict in as a partner, they would be binding their fates together in ways that went beyond personal feelings. They would be making a public declaration that they were a team, and that would have consequences she could not fully predict. But the alternative was to face Marston alone, with nothing but their small operation and Kara's fierce determination. And Jessa knew, with bone-deep certainty, that would not be enough. I am in, she said finally. If Benedict is willing, I think we should do this. Benedict looked at her, really looked at her, and something passed between them that needed no words. Then he nodded once decisively. I am willing. Let us build something that lasts. Kara whooped, loud and triumphant, and launched into immediate planning mode. They stayed up late into the night, working out the details of their proposal, drafting arguments and calculating numbers. Jessa found herself taking notes while Kara paced and dictated, Benedict adding practical considerations from his years working the lake trade. It felt right, the three of them working in concert, their different strengths balancing and complementing each other. By the time they finally collapsed into sleep, exhausted but hopeful, Jessa felt like they might actually have a chance. The next weeks were a blur of preparation. They worked dawn to dusk, tending the weir and documenting everything they did. Benedict drew up plans for a small boatworks that could be built on their lease property, sketching designs and calculating material costs. Kara made trips to the village, collecting written testimonials from their customers and allies. Jessa practiced speaking, standing in front of the cabin mirror and forcing herself to project confidence she did not entirely feel. "You sound too apologetic," Kara critiqued from the doorway. "You are asking for permission instead of stating your case. Try it again, but this time pretend you are me." "If I pretend I am you, I will insult the entire commission in the first 3 sentences." "Valid point. Okay, do not pretend you are me. But pretend you are someone who knows they deserve what they are asking for. Because we do deserve it, Jessa. We have earned this." Jessa tried again and again, until her voice started to carry the ring of conviction. Benedict listened from his spot by the fire, offering gentle encouragement when she faltered. His presence was steadying, a quiet assurance that she was not alone in this. The auction hearing was scheduled for a cold morning in late winter, when the ice was just beginning to show signs of breaking up along the shoreline. They dressed in their best clothes, which were still work-worn but clean and mended, and made the trip to the county seat together. The commission met in a large timber hall that served as courthouse, meeting house, and market center for the scattered lake communities. The hall was more crowded than Jessa had expected. Besides the 3 commissioners, there were at least a dozen other people present. Some were clearly supporters, farmers and merchants they had done business with over the years. Others were strangers in fine clothes who watched with cool, assessing eyes. At the front of the room, a tall man in expensive woolen stood conferring with a clerk. He had the look of old money and easy power, his hair silver at the temples, his boots polished to a high shine. When he saw them enter, his gaze swept over them dismissively before returning to his conversation. "That is Garrett Marston," Kara murmured. "I recognize him from descriptions." "The consortium is named after his family." They took their seats and waited while the commissioners worked through preliminary business. Jessa's hands were shaking, so she folded them in her lap and tried to breathe steadily. Benedict sat close enough that their shoulders touched, a small point of contact that helped anchor her. On her other side, Kara radiated defiant energy, her jaw set and her eyes bright with fighting spirit. Finally, the head commissioner, a weathered man named Aldrich Farrow, called the fishing lease to order. "We are here to consider bids for the Eastern Weir fishing rights, currently held by Jessa and Jessa Stillwater. We have received 2 formal bids. The existing leaseholders and the Marston Fishing Consortium. Marston, you are first. Present your case." Garrett Marston stood with easy confidence, his hands clasped behind his back. "Thank you, Commissioner Farrow. The Marston Consortium has been operating on this lake for 30 years, providing quality fish to communities throughout the region. We have the capital, the expertise, and the infrastructure to maximize the productivity of the Eastern Weir site. Our bid includes a substantial increase in lease payments to the county, as well as employment opportunities for local residents." He went on, painting a picture of efficiency and prosperity, of a well-oiled operation that would benefit everyone. He did not mention the Stillwater sisters by name, but the implication was clear. They were small, inefficient, a relic of a more disorganized past that should be swept aside in favor of professional management. When he finished, Commissioner Farrow nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Marston. Stillwater Operation, you may present your case." Jessa stood, her legs unsteady, and walked to the front of the room. Kara and Benedict came with her, flanking her on either side. She had notes prepared, arguments and statistics, but when she opened her mouth, what came out was simpler and more direct than anything she had planned. "My sister and I have worked the Eastern Weir for 3 years," she began, and was relieved to hear her voice come out steady and clear. "In that time, we have met every obligation to the county, paid every fee on time, and maintained catch levels that equal or exceed what the site produced under previous operators. We have built relationships with local businesses and become part of this community. We are asking for the opportunity to continue that work, not as a favor, but because we have earned it." She glanced at her notes, then set them aside. "The Marston Consortium can offer you money and promises. We can offer you 3 years of proven results. We can offer you a commitment to this place and these people that goes beyond profit margins. And we can offer you expansion. Benedict Thorne is a licensed boat builder with 10 years' experience working these waters. He is joining our operation as a partner, bringing boat building and repair services to the Eastern Shore. That makes us more than just a fishing operation. It makes us a resource for the entire community." Garrett Marston shifted in his seat, his expression cooling. "If I may, Commissioner, I have some questions for the applicants. Proceed." Marston stood again, directing his attention to Jessa with the sort of polite condescension that set her teeth on edge. "Miss Stillwater, you mentioned that Mr. Thorne is joining your operation as a partner. What exactly is he investing in this partnership? What capital is he bringing?" "His expertise and his labor," Jessa said. "He will be building boats and maintaining infrastructure in exchange for a share of the operation's profits. So he is investing nothing tangible. No coin, no equipment, no property." Marston smiled thinly. "That is not a partnership, Miss Stillwater. That is employment. And it raises the question of why a human boat builder would choose to tie his fortunes to a marginal operation when he could seek more stable work elsewhere." The implication hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Jessa felt heat rise in her face, anger and humiliation warring in her chest. Beside her, Kara stiffened, and Benedict's hand moved to rest lightly on Jessa's back, a gesture of support that was visible to everyone in the room. "I am choosing to partner with the Stillwater operation because I believe in their work and their vision," Benedict said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "I have spent the past 4 months working alongside them. I have seen their skill, their dedication, and their integrity. Those are the qualities I want in business partners, and they are worth more than gold to me." "Pretty words," Marston said, "but the Commission needs to consider practical realities. The Stillwater sisters have done adequate work with a small operation, but they lack the resources to scale up or weather difficult seasons. They lack the connections and capital that would allow them to compete in a changing market. And if I may be frank, they lack the credibility that comes with established human operation. The lake communities are traditional. They trust names they know. Marston is a name that has stood for quality and reliability for 3 decades. Can the same be said of Stillwater?" The room had gone very quiet. Jessa could feel the eyes of the audience on her, measuring, judging. Some faces were sympathetic. Others were closed and unreadable. She thought about backing down, about letting Kara take over, about accepting that maybe Marston was right and they were outmatched. Then she thought about Benedict pulling her from the frozen lake, about Kara's fierce loyalty, about every early morning and late night they had worked to build something good. And she found her voice. "No," she said clearly. "Stillwater is not a name that has stood for 30 years. It is a name that has stood for 3. But in those 3 years, we have built relationships based on quality and trust. The people we do business with know us. They know we deliver what we promise. And they know we are part of this community in a way that a distant consortium can never be." She turned to address the commissioners directly. "You ask about credibility. I give you this. Grenfell at the Lakeside Tavern has a letter in our file stating that our smoked fish is the best he has ever served, and his customers request it by name. Martha Collier at the general store has been buying our catch for 3 years, and has never had cause to complain about quality or reliability. Factor Wendell, who buys for the city markets, has increased his orders every season because his buyers specifically ask for Stillwater fish." Kara stepped forward, producing a sheaf of papers. "We have written testimonials from every major buyer we work with. We have catch records showing consistent yields. We have payment records showing we have never missed a lease payment or tax obligation. This is not a marginal operation, Mr. Marston. This is a successful business run by people who care about their work." Benedict spoke up again, his voice steady. "As for my involvement, I am not seeking stable work elsewhere because I have found what I want here. I am tired of working for operations that see fishers and builders as interchangeable parts. The Stillwaters see people as partners. That matters to me, and I believe it should matter to this commission." Commissioner Farrow exchanged glances with his fellow commissioners, then leaned forward. "Mr. Marston, you mentioned employment opportunities in your proposal. How many local residents do you currently employ in your lake operations?" Marston hesitated, just for a moment. "Our operations are streamlined for efficiency. We employ skilled workers who can maximize productivity." "That is not an answer to my question. How many locals?" "We bring in our own crews, Commissioner. They are trained to our standards and experienced in our methods." "So you employ no one from the lake communities?" "We employ the best people for the job, regardless of origin." Farrow sat back, his expression thoughtful. "And the Stillwater operation, how many people do you employ?" Kara answered. "Currently, we hire seasonal help during peak fishing times, usually 3 or 4 locals who know the lake and need the work. With the addition of a boatworks, we expect to hire at least 2 apprentice builders within the first year." The commissioners conferred in low voices. Jessa stood at the front of the room, her heart hammering, and tried to read their faces. Marston looked confident, unruffled, like a man who had already won and was simply waiting for the formality of announcement. She wanted to hate him for that certainty, but mostly she just felt tired. Commissioner Farrow cleared his throat. "We have one more question for the Stillwater operation. The lake communities rely heavily on ice fishing during winter months. Your current operation focuses on spring through autumn. With the addition of a boat-building partner, do you have plans to extend your operation year-round?" Jessa glanced at Benedict, who gave a tiny nod. They had discussed this possibility but had not planned to bring it up yet. Now, faced with a direct question, she made a choice. "Yes," she said. "With a boat builder on site, we can maintain equipment and build new vessels during winter months, which is traditionally the slow season for construction. Additionally, we have been considering adding ice fishing to our operation, which would provide fresh fish to local markets during winter when preserved fish is the only other option. That would require investment in specialized equipment, but it is achievable within the next 2 years." Marston laughed, short and sharp. "Commissioner, with respect, you cannot take that seriously. They are making promises they cannot possibly keep, grasping at anything that might sway your decision. Where would they get the capital for ice fishing equipment? Where would they get the expertise? This is exactly what I meant about credibility. They are amateurs playing at business. We are not amateurs, Kara said, her voice cutting. We are professionals who started with nothing and built something real. Yes, we will need capital for expansion. We will get it the same way we got everything else, through hard work and careful saving and partnerships with people who believe in us. And as for expertise, my sister and I have been ice fishing since we were children. We know these waters in every season. Can your imported crews say the same? The room erupted in murmurs, people shifting and whispering. Commissioner Farrow raised his hand for silence. We have heard from both parties. Unless there is additional testimony, we will adjourn to consider our decision. There is additional testimony, a voice called from the back of the room. Old Grenfell stood, leaning on his walking stick, his weathered face set in determined lines. I have been running the Lakeside Tavern for 40 years. I have served fish from every operation on this lake. And I am here to tell you that the Stillwater sisters provide the best quality fish I have seen in all that time. They are honest, reliable, and they care about their product. That counts for something. Martha Collier stood next. I agree with Grenfell. I do business with the Stillwaters because I trust them and because my customers ask for their fish by name. If you give this lease to Marston, you will be hurting local business and local people. One by one, other voices joined in. A farmer who bought fish scraps for fertilizer. A cooper who supplied barrels to the smokehouse. A tavern keeper from a village 3 miles up the shore who traveled to buy Stillwater fish because his patrons preferred it. Jessa listened with growing disbelief as people she barely knew spoke up in their defense, offering testimony and support. Garrett Marston's confident expression had developed a hairline crack of irritation. Commissioner Farrow, this is highly irregular. These testimonials, while touching, do not address the central question of which operation can best serve the county's interests. On the contrary, Mr. Marston, they address it precisely. Farrow stood, and the room quieted. The commission appreciates both presentations. We will adjourn for 1 hour to deliberate, and then we will announce our decision. All parties are asked to wait. The hour that followed was the longest of Jessa's life. They waited in the cold hallway outside the meeting room, too nervous to sit, too tense to leave. Kara paced like a caged animal. Benedict stood with his back to the wall, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Jessa just tried to breathe. We did everything we could, she said finally, more to reassure herself than anyone else. I know, Kara said, but sometimes everything you can do is not enough. Sometimes the system is rigged and the fix is in and decent people lose to money and connections. Do not borrow trouble, Benedict said quietly. We do not know the outcome yet. I am not borrowing trouble. I am preparing for disappointment so it hurts less when it comes. Jessa reached out and caught her sister's hand, squeezing tight. Whatever happens, we stay together. We figure out the next step. We do not give up. Kara squeezed back, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Damn right we do not. When the hour was up, they filed back into the meeting room. The commissioners had returned to their seats, and their expressions gave nothing away. Garrett Marston sat with the same easy confidence, but Jessa thought she detected a tightness around his eyes that had not been there before. Commissioner Farrow stood. The commission has considered both proposals carefully. We acknowledge that the Marston Consortium has significant resources and a long history on this lake. We also acknowledge that the Stillwater operation has demonstrated 3 years of successful, reliable service and has strong community support. After thorough deliberation, we have reached a decision. Jessa held her breath. The Eastern Weir fishing lease will be granted to the Stillwater operation, with the condition that Benedict Thorne be licensed as a partner, and that the operation file expansion plans within 6 months, showing how they intend to provide year-round services to the community. The lease term is 5 years with review after 3. The room erupted. Grenfell let out a cheer, and Martha Collier was clapping. Kara grabbed Jessa in a fierce hug, laughing and crying at the same time. Benedict wrapped his arms around both of them, his face split in a grin wider than Jessa had ever seen. Garrett Marston stood stiffly, his jaw tight. "Commissioner, I must protest. This decision is final," Farrow said flatly. "The commission has spoken. Your consortium is welcome to bid on other lease properties when they become available, but the Eastern Weir is awarded to Stillwater. Do you have any other business before this commission?" Marston stared at them for a long moment, his expression curdling. Then he turned on his heel and strode from the room without another word. The clerk who had been sitting with him scrambled to gather papers and follow. In the aftermath, there was celebration and congratulations, handshakes and backslaps. People they barely knew came up to offer support and business propositions. It was overwhelming and wonderful and exhausting all at once. They finally escaped into the cold afternoon air, the 3 of them standing in the muddy road outside the meeting hall, and Jessa felt something inside her chest unclench for the first time in weeks. "We did it," she said, wonderingly. "We actually did it." "Of course we did," Kara said, wiping her eyes. "Did you doubt me?" "Constantly." "Fair." Kara looked between them, her grin turning sly. "So, partners, that is official now. Which means we need to have a serious conversation about profit sharing and decision-making and all that tedious business stuff." "Later," Jessa said. "Right now I just want to go home and sleep for a week." They started the long walk back to the weir, talking and laughing, making plans and telling jokes. The sun was setting by the time they reached the frozen lake, painting the ice in shades of orange and pink. The weir stood dark against the sky, solid and waiting, and Jessa felt a surge of fierce affection for the place. This was theirs. They had earned it. That night, after Kara had gone to bed, Jessa and Benedict stood outside by the shore, watching the stars reflect on the ice. The night was cold and clear, the kind of cold that made the stars seem close enough to touch. "I have been thinking," Benedict said quietly, "about what happens next, about what it means to be partners. What does it mean? It means we are tied together for better or worse. Your success is my success. Your struggles are my struggles." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "It also means that what we have between us, personally, is going to be complicated by business considerations. We need to be careful not to let one thing ruin the other." Jessa nodded slowly. "You are right, but I also think we can handle it. We have been honest with each other so far. I do not see why that should change." "Neither do I, but I wanted to say it out loud, make sure we are thinking about it." He reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm despite the cold. "I am in this, Jessa, all the way, the business and the rest of it. I just wanted you to know that." "I know. And I am in it too, all the way." They stood together in the darkness, hand in hand, and Jessa thought about futures and possibilities, about the boats Benedict would build and the fish they would catch and the life they would make together. It was not a simple path, and it would not be easy. But it would be theirs, earned and chosen, and that was enough. Spring came in a rush of melting ice and running water. The lake broke up along the shorelines first, then in great sheets that groaned and cracked and finally gave way. The fish began their runs and the weir came alive with activity. Jessa and Kara worked dawn to dusk hauling in catches while Benedict started clearing ground for the boatworks. laying foundations and framing walls. They hired help as promised, 2 young men from the village who needed work and wanted to learn the trade. Benedict took them on as apprentices, teaching them the basics of boat building with the same patient thoroughness he brought to everything. Kara negotiated contracts with new buyers, expanding their market reach. Jessa managed the day-to-day operations, coordinating everyone's efforts and making sure nothing fell through the cracks. It was exhausting work, and there were days when Jessa wondered if they had taken on too much too fast. But there were also moments of perfect rightness when everything clicked and she could see the shape of what they were building. A real business, a real future. One evening in late spring, when the work was finally slowing to a manageable pace, Kara announced that she was going to the village to negotiate a new supply contract and would probably stay overnight. She said it casually, like it was no big deal, but the look she gave Jessa was pointed and knowing. "You are still trying to engineer things," Jessa said. "I am conducting business. It is not my fault that business sometimes requires me to be elsewhere." Kara grinned. "But you are welcome to use the time however you see fit. The cabin will be all yours for a whole night. Whatever will you do with such freedom? Work, probably. There are nets to mend and accounts to update. You are hopeless, utterly hopeless." Kara grabbed her pack and headed for the door, then paused and looked back. "For what it is worth, I am proud of you, little sister. You found your voice. You stood up when it mattered, and you built something good." Jessa felt her throat tighten with emotion. "We built it together. You, me, and Benedict. It is all of ours." "True. But you are the heart of it. Do not ever forget that." After Kara left, Jessa did try to work on the accounts, but her mind kept wandering. Benedict was down at the new boat works, putting finishing touches on the first vessel he had built on their property, a sleek fishing boat commissioned by a merchant from upriver. She could see him through the window, bent over his work in the golden evening light, and felt a flutter of affection so strong it made her chest ache. She set down her pen and went to find him. Benedict looked up when she approached, a smile lighting his face. "Come to inspect the work." Something like that. She ran her hand along the boat's smooth hull, admiring the clean lines and careful joinery. "It is beautiful. You do good work." "Thank you. I am trying to build a reputation for quality. If we can get word out that Stillwater Boatworks produces vessels that last, we will have more commissions than we can handle." "Stillwater Boatworks," Jessa repeated, testing the name. "That sounds official." "It is official. We have the license and everything." She turned to face him, suddenly serious. "Benedict, are you happy here? Really happy? Not just making the best of a situation, but genuinely glad you stayed?" He set down his tools and came to stand in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him after a day in the sun. "I have never been happier anywhere. This place, this work, you and Kara, it is everything I wanted and did not know how to ask for." "Why? Are you having doubts?" "No, no doubts. I just wanted to hear you say it." "Then let me say something else." He took both her hands in his expression turning earnest. "I have been thinking about the future, about what we are building and where it might go. And I realized that I do not want to just be your business partner, Jessa. I want more than that." Jessa's heart was suddenly racing. "What do you want?" "I want to build a life with you. A real life, not just a working arrangement. I want to wake up next to you and fall asleep beside you and figure out this whole messy, complicated thing together." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "I am asking if you would consider marrying me, not right away if you are not ready, but someday, when it feels right." Jessa stared at him, at this quiet man who had become the center of her world without her quite noticing when it happened. There were 1,000 things she could say, careful, reasonable things about timing and practicality and waiting to be sure. But what came out was simpler and more honest. Yes. Yes, I will marry you, not someday, soon, because I am sure and I do not want to wait. Benedict let out a breath that might have been a laugh or a sob and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight enough that she could feel his heart hammering against her chest. Soon, he agreed. As soon as we can arrange it. They were married 3 weeks later, in a simple ceremony at the village square with Kara as witness and half the lake community in attendance. It was not fancy or elaborate, but it was real and true, and that was all Jessa needed. She wore a dress that Martha Collier had helped her sew, green as deep water, and Benedict wore his best shirt and a nervous smile. And when they spoke their vows, Jessa's voice rang out clear and steady. Kara cried, which she claimed was allergies, and Grenfeld provided beer for the celebration, and they danced in the square while the sun set over the lake. It was a perfect day, simple and joyful, exactly like everything else they had built. That night, in the cabin that was now officially theirs together, Benedict and Jessa lay in the loft under the eaves and talked about the future. They wanted to expand the boatworks, maybe hire another apprentice. They wanted to add ice fishing equipment so they could operate year-round. They wanted to build a larger cabin, one with room for a proper workshop and maybe, eventually, a family. Kara is going to take credit for all of this, you know, Jessa said, nestled against Benedict's side. She is going to say that if she had not shoved me into your arms that day, none of this would have happened. She did not shove you into my arms. You fell through the ice and I pulled you out. That is not how she tells the story. In her version, she engineered a dramatic rescue to force us to confront our feelings. Benedict laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Of course she does. Well, let her tell whatever story she wants. We know the truth. Which is that we found each other in the middle of a hard winter and we chose to build something together. No one pushed us into it. We walked in with our eyes open. Jessa tilted her head up to kiss him, soft and sweet. I like that version better. They fell asleep tangled together, warm and content, and outside the spring night was full of promise. The lake was open and the fish were running and the future stretched ahead of them, full of possibility. The years that followed were not without challenges. There were difficult seasons when the catches were lean and money was tight. There were storms that damaged the weir and accidents that required expensive repairs. There were conflicts with other fishing operations and negotiations with difficult buyers, and all the normal friction of running a business in a hard land. But there were also good years, seasons of abundance when the smokehouse was full, and the orders kept coming, and they could afford to hire more help and expand their operation. Benedict's boats became known throughout the region for their quality, and Stillwater Fish maintained its reputation as the best on the lake. They built a new cabin, larger and sturdier, with a workshop for Benedict and an office for managing the business and a big kitchen where Kara held court while making plans. 4 years after the hearing, on a warm summer evening, Jessa discovered she was pregnant. She told Benedict first, in the quiet of their bedroom, and watched joy transform his face. Then they told Kara together over dinner, and Kara whooped loud enough to disturb the fish in the lake and announced that she was going to be the best aunt who ever lived. Their daughter was born the following spring, during the first flush of fish runs, and they named her Bryn. She had Jessa's dark hair and Benedict's gray eyes, and an imperious cry that suggested she had inherited Kara's forceful personality. Kara was indeed an exceptional aunt, doting and protective and willing to hold the baby for hours while Jessa caught up on sleep. 2 years later they had a second daughter, and they named her Flora. She was quieter than her sister, more contemplative, and loved nothing more than sitting in Benedict's workshop watching him work. As the girls grew, They became fixtures around the weir and boatworks, learning the family trade by observation and participation. Jessa never stopped being amazed by the life they had built. On difficult days, when the work seemed endless and the challenges insurmountable, she would look around at her family, at the thriving operation they had created, at the community they were part of, and feel overwhelming gratitude. They had started with nothing but stubbornness and hope, and they had built something real and lasting. Kara eventually married too, a gruff trader from upriver, who had been courting her for 3 years before she finally agreed to give him a chance. She claimed she was only marrying him to get him to stop asking, but everyone could see the way she softened around him, the way her fierce edges found a balance in his steady calm. He moved in and became part of the operation, taking over much of the logistics and transportation side of the business. The extended family grew and thrived. On Bryn's 5th birthday, they threw a party at the weir, inviting half the lake community to celebrate. It was a warm day in early summer, the kind of day that made everything feel possible. Children ran and played while adults talked and laughed and ate smoked fish that Jessa had prepared using her grandmother's recipe. Benedict had built a small sailing boat as a birthday gift, and Bryn launched it with ceremony, her small face serious as she christened it the Swift. Jessa stood at the edge of the celebration, watching it all with quiet contentment, when Kara appeared at her elbow. "Not bad for a couple of orc women who started with nothing," Kara said. "We did not start with nothing, we had each other." "True. And then we picked up a stray boat builder and things really took off." Jessa laughed. "Is that how you remember it?" "That is exactly how I remember it. I had a brilliant idea to bring him into the partnership, and everything else followed from my genius. You are impossible." "I am amazing. There is a difference." Kara bumped her shoulder affectionately. "But seriously, little sister, look at what we built. Look at your family. You did good." "We did good. All of us together." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Benedict show the children how to adjust the boat's sail, watching Flora toddle after her sister with determined concentration, watching their friends and neighbors celebrate under the summer sun. The weir stood solid behind them, the boatworks hummed with ongoing projects, and the smokehouse held enough cured fish to see them through any lean season. It was not the life Jessa had imagined when she first saw that auction notice nailed to the post. It was better. More complicated, more challenging, more rewarding than anything she could have planned. She had found her voice and her courage and her partnership, and in doing so had built something that would last beyond her own lifetime. As the sun began to set, painting the lake in shades of gold and crimson, Benedict came to find her. He slipped his hand into hers, their fingers interlacing with the ease of long practice. "Good party," he said simply. "Very good party." She leaned into him, solid and warm and home. "Thank you for building this with me. Thank you for letting me stay." They watched the sunset together, surrounded by their family and community, and Jessa thought about that winter day when she had fallen through the ice and Benedict had pulled her to safety. Kara claimed she had pushed them together, and maybe in her own way she had, through sheer force of personality and well-timed absences, and a refusal to let either of them hide behind silence. But the truth, Jessa thought, was simpler than that. They had found each other in the cold and chosen to build warmth together. They had taken a chance on partnership, on trust, on love, and that choice had made all the difference. The party wound down as darkness fell, families drifting home with promises to visit soon. Kara and her husband stayed to help clean up, and then they too departed, leaving Jessa and Benedict alone with their sleeping daughters. They carried the girls inside, tucking them into their small beds, then stood together in the doorway watching them sleep. "You ever regret it?" Benedict asked quietly. Any of it? Jessa leaned her head against his shoulder. Not for a single moment, not even close. They went to bed shortly after, climbing the ladder to their loft, and lay together in the darkness listening to the lake whisper against the shore. Outside, the weir stood watch over the dark water. The boatworks held boats in various stages of completion, and the smokehouse waited for the next day's catch. Tomorrow there would be work, endless work, the ongoing tasks of maintaining and growing their operation. But tonight there was peace and satisfaction, and the quiet knowledge that they had built something good, something that would last, something that mattered. Jessa fell asleep with Benedict's arm around her waist, and their daughters breathing softly in the room below. And she dreamed of open water and fair winds, and a future as bright as summer sunshine on the lake. They had earned it, all of them together, through hard work and honesty and the courage to speak up when it mattered most. And that, Jessa thought as sleep claimed her, was the best kind of happy ending there was. Not perfect, not simple, but real and true and entirely their own.